Real quick, everything I did to do this successfully, and maybe a few things you'd want to try as well while you're doing this job. First thing I did is I removed the radiator fan. That was a big part of trying to get this front catalytic converter out. It's really tight space in there without doing that. Same thing with these ignition coils. Really, it's just for more space. You don't need to. I consider it optional, but I just figured the extra inch or two of clearance to help you pull out the cat made it a little bit easier. And of course in the back, same thing with the ignition coils, getting those out. And then at the bottom, a couple heat shields behind the catalytic converter we'll take out. I'll show you guys how to do that. But yes, this is the Honda Accord V6. It's a 2003, and I believe the engines run until 2007. So if you're looking at this video and hopefully trying to decide if this is what you're going to use to work on your car, then there you go. That's the info I've got for you. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take the radiator fan off. So on the 6-speed V6 Accords, I don't know if this is true for all of them or just this one, but for some reason this radiator fan is actually a two-part. So there's a passenger side fan and then there's the driver's side fan. So in order to get the front PreCat out, we're just going to need to take the passenger side off. No need to really mess with the driver's side. Like I said, it's two parts, so you don't need to take anything apart. The only thing that you need to worry about on the right side, driver's side, there is, let's see if I can get the camera down in here, on the fluid reservoir, there is a bolt right under the reservoir. You're going to unbolt that. That is going to get the reservoir free from the fan and of course the rack, and you can just set the bottle aside. It just pulls right out. And then to get the actual fan off, we've got one bolt here, one here, and we've got a connector right here. Just go ahead and pinch and pull like most normal connectors. And then, let's see if I can try and get it in there. There is a push pin tab right there. If you get a screwdriver under it, pull it up. That'll make it nice and easy for you. And then a little bit ways down the side, see if I can get up to it. See that little connector down there? See if I can focus in on it. Maybe not. Way at the bottom there. So you got two options. You can disconnect it, and that will let you get the fan free, or you can leave it plugged in, and there's actually a steel bracket that the connector is connected on. If you push the tab in, you can just slip the connector off the bracket on the fan. That way you don't have to actually disconnect the connector entirely. And then the very last thing you'll need to do, you just go way down to the bottom of the engine, right under the water shield, whatever you want to call it. And there is one more bolt at the very bottom of the fan. After that, you should be able just to go ahead and just grab this, pull it out, set it aside, make sure you remember everything you took apart, and that gives us room to get to the front catalytic converter here. Want to do, and this is optional, not everyone does this. I did it just to give myself some more room because getting this cat out can be a little difficult keeping the heat shield on. So we're going to go ahead and remove the ignition coils off the front of the engine. These are really easy. They're just hex bolts. Get a normal little breaker, just twist them off, super easy. Disconnect the connectors on each one, and these kind of slide out. They're like big straws. When you take them out, it's usually recommended that you put a paper towel in the hole, so if you get grime, dirt, you don't get it inside with the spark plug, because then it's going to get dirty and we don't want to do that. So set these aside, don't get them dirty at all, just kind of keep them wrapped up in a towel, clean towel, and then that's for the front cat. On the rear ignition coils for the rear PreCat, let's see if I can show you guys where they are real quick. So we've got the far left one here under the power steering line, return, whatever it is. You got the middle one that is right above the O2 sensor on the rear cap, and the one far back on the right here. And once again, all have that kind of hex bolt holding them in. Get the connectors on the side, push and pull them out. These are a little bit harder to get out since you got the firewall right behind you, so you have to kind of pull them out at an angle, but be careful to not bend them because these are expensive. So once you get those out, same thing, stuff them with paper towels, wrap the coils up in a clean towel and set them aside, and that should hopefully give you more room on that rear catalytic converter. Alright, so on to the catalytic converter. So on the front one here, really easy. Got our O2 sensor right here, and there are 4 bolts that are parallel to each other on the actual catalytic converter that bolt onto the crankcase. I believe these are 12 millimeters. I needed a deep socket for these just because those studs come out so far. I couldn't get a normal socket on it to pull them off, so just a recommendation. If you're going to use a box wrench, please only use a 6-point. If you use anything higher than that, I guarantee you will strip these bolts. These are typically pretty on there, really tight. So just forewarning you, fair warning. Then for the heat shield, the 2 bolts on top here, they're kind of tricky. So this nut we see right here, that's actually welded onto the heat shield. You cannot spin this nut. So what you need to do is get the nut under it. That is a 10 millimeter nut right there. Well, it's actually a bolt that screws into the welded nut. The welded nut's 12 millimeters. That will not budge. The 10 millimeter bolt will move. You're going to go ahead and unscrew that. Exact same position on the other side here. It's the one facing the front of the engine. And then you're going to unbolt those. The O2 sensor, once again, I needed a O2 sensor socket. It's easiest to do. I rented it. I'm going to go ahead and return it today. Really cheap, 30 bucks. Then that leads us over here. This connector, pinch and pull it apart, really easy. So now for the back catalytic converter, the rear PreCat, we're going to go back here and see if we can get the camera in there far enough. Let's see. Very hard maneuvering past all these wires and such. Let's see. Alright, there we go. So the thing about mine, it does not have a heat shield on right now. I was not able to fit the stock heat shield on with the high flow PreCats I'm installing. But it is pretty much the exact same on the back end as it is in the front. 4 bolts holding the cat together, 2 there, then 2 on the other side. A little bit hard to get back in that corner, but it's pretty much parallel to each other. And of course, we've got our O2 sensor right there in the middle. Heat shield, it's going to be exact same as the front. Make sure you pay attention to the size of the bolts. Remember, we only want to get the 10 millimeter bolt. That is the only one that spins. The 12 will not spin. That is welded on there. So, as for the O2 sensor, we're going to follow this wire. So we're going to go here, and then there's the connector. So, I spent forever trying to get this O2 the O2 connector apart, and little did I know, there's actually a clip on, I wish I could get back there to show you guys, there's a clip behind the connector. If you get a flathead screwdriver and pull that clip up, you should be able to just push that connector. Let's see if I can get my hand in there. On the very back end here, there's a little clip. Push it up, and then you should be able to push that connector off, and that'll help you get your hands around it and give you more leverage to pop it off. And then, of course, the connector next to that is the downstream O2 sensor as well. There are a bunch of clips that run down the back of the engine. Really easy to see from the bottom of the car. But as for time and my patience, of course, I didn't bother doing that. But just so you know, that is there. And that is what we're going to do for the rear PreCat. This is a part I want to show that maybe is going to help you more than it did me. I decided to not do this just because I didn't have the time nor the patience, but this is a better way to disconnect the downstream O2 sensor on the front catalytic converter. Next to the front O2 sensor, the one we talked about earlier, there is another connector behind it, that gray one right there. And if you follow that little white wire all the way down, we got one clip right there. Let's see if I can get my little laser pointer on it. Right there. Then we've got one more farther down. Let me go ahead and get that laser pointer again. Right there. Now, I honestly can't tell you how to get these off. I would imagine you just get a pair of pliers and pinch that back part of it right there, and maybe it'll pop off. I decided not to do this just because if you have to try and reattach those to those little metal barbs, you're going to have your hands down in there and it's going to take forever. So if that's the way you want to go, disconnecting the downstream O2 sensor and then taking apart those clips, more power to you. I decided not to do it and it went just fine, but I thought I'd mention this just in case you wanted to give it a try. Alright, so up next, I would consider probably one of the more labor-intensive parts of this job is removing the J-pipe. So, as I said, I went ahead and left off my J-pipe for this demonstration just because I could show you guys the heat shield. So, it's still not installed in this case. But I think I could still probably walk you through it on how this works. So, we're under the engine right now, and this part right here you see sticking out, that is the resonator. Some cars have them, some don't. If you have a delete, there's only 3 bolts. They're going to hold the J-pipe to the resonator. As you can see, it's just a triangle shape. And then, once that's disconnected, there is a hanger that the J-pipe actually hangs off of. It's that little rubber washer right there. I actually had to go ahead and get a new one because the one that was on here originally was really torn up, falling apart, really degrading. It's only 20 bucks at the Honda dealer, so I went ahead and just bought that. But that hangs on to, and this is the new J-pipe, it's that little post right there. On the stock ones, there's usually a little triangular arrow hooked onto the end of this. It makes it a real pain to get it off. But with a little bit of WD-40 and a wrench, you could possibly pull it off like that. So, when we disconnect it from the back there, we still have it hanging on the hanger. I'd recommend to leave it on a hanger because as you unbolt everything, the stress from the weight of the J-pipe is going to start pulling on the bolts and it's going to be harder for you to get them off. So if we come back to our rear PreCat here, the J-pipe, this rear port right here is going to hook into the rear catalytic converter. Same deal, 3 bolts, super simple. Unscrew those. I believe they're 12 millimeters. In case you're wondering, this is what they look like. Just simple flange nuts. Then the last set of bolts we need to do is the front of the J-pipe, and that brings us to the front catalytic converter, the front PreCat. Same thing, 3 bolts, super easy. The hard part of all this is that once you start taking all these bolts off, the cats and the resonator, the weight is going to pick up a lot on the hanger. So what I'd recommend anyways is get a jack, see if you can prop it on the side of a car here, on the side of the car, and get it under the J-pipe to help it support the weight as you start to unloosen things. So that way when it starts to come down, your jack can hold it up. And then once you get all the bolts off and the hanger and everything, you can lower the jack and then bring it down to the ground like this. That's just what I recommend, but just be careful about it because these J-pipes can be very heavy. Next, we're going to get the 2 heat shields that are on the rear PreCat. So we're going to get under the car here. I'm trying to get under here without hitting my head on anything. All right. So we've got our oil pan right here. And then we got our first cat. We're going to go a little bit farther behind that. And then here is our rear PreCat. So I went ahead and left the J-pipe off just so I could show this part where you take the heat shields off. In order to get this off with the stock heat shield, you need to take this bolt off here. This is one big heat shield that's attached to the frame of the car. There's another bolt. It's going to be kind of hard to show with the cat in place, but there's another bolt just over that little lip there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's just behind the catalytic converter. There's another bolt up there. Go ahead and undo that. Those are both, I believe, 10 millimeters. Once you take those 2 off, they should just come right out. It's really easy. And then the other heat shield you need to get, it's going to start on this big black piece right here. Let's see if we can zoom out a little bit. This right here, this is part of that. The one bolt here, I believe this is also 10 millimeter, might be 12. I can't remember off the top of my head. And this connects up to here. This bolt right here, that's another one. That's, I believe, once again, 10 or 12 millimeters. And then if you go up above, once again, really hard to see above this without that catalytic converter out, but if you go above this heat shield here, there is one more bolt. Let's see if I can reposition so I can show you guys. Let's see. Well, might not be able to see it from here, but if you go just above this lip, there is another bolt up there as well that is also 10 or 12 millimeters. And so once that is all unbolted, this should just come out real easily. You will need to remove this bracket that mounts onto the catalytic converter. It's just one 10 millimeter bolt right here. And if you want, you can just take the whole bracket off and take this off as well. Or you could just leave it on the catalytic converter. That's up to you. But that's how we get the heat shield off. So it lets you get the catalytic converter out of here without having to take the heat shield apart and all that crazy stuff. So that's for the heat shield on the rear catalytic converter. We need to get down to the PreCat O2 sensors on the downstream. I'm going to get back under the car again. And then we'll start with the front PreCat. So here we are again. Got our oil pan right here. And then the front PreCat, our downstream O2 sensor, right up here. Once again, that O2 socket comes amazingly in this situation because it's such a tight space trying to fit a wrench in here. But the only thing that might be different about mine than would be on yours, that little silver part that's connecting to the O2 sensor, that's a defouler. I'm going to see if it works or not. I've been told it helps with codes and such, especially on high flow cats. We'll see. I'm going to give them a try. And then we're going to go to the rear PreCat. And then you can already see it from here. Got our O2 sensor right there. It's right behind the bracket. Same thing. Silver piece is the defouler.